I'm with Kevin Vollrath from the United States, who is a student here in the Holy Land. Now, Kevin, what are you studying here, and why did you decide to study here in the Holy Land?
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here with you. Yes, I'm here doing research for my dissertation in a field called religion and society, and I'm researching specifically how the occupation of Palestine affects people with disabilities, especially Palestinians with disabilities. So one of the ways that I do that is I volunteer with a couple of organizations here in Bethlehem. I'm mostly focused on Bethlehem and try to get to know their stories and hear more about how life is for them and how religious resources inform their advocacy work.
Was it difficult to leave your family and friends and church to come to the Holy Land?
Yes, it was difficult, of course, especially in the time of Corona when I was already distant from them and now even more distant for an unknown period. So while it was difficult to leave, it's been great to come here and meet a lot of lovely people. So
it must open up your eyes so much more being in a country like the Middle East.
Yes, definitely. I've visited before in 2019, but coming back, I see the land in a whole new light, getting to know people in a different way, staying for a longer period of time.
Now, for your studies, you're doing volunteer work, some different charity organizations here in Bethlehem. Who are you volunteering with?
Yeah, I'm mostly working with two organizations. One is called Noor, which means light in Arabic, and they're in the Aida camp, just north of Bethlehem. They're a center for children born with disabilities, the main center for people in any refugee camp in the Bethlehem area. So I help teach some children and adults English, and then whenever anyone else at the center needs something, especially related to English help, I'm there to support with that.
Is it easy teaching English?
Absolutely not. It's very challenging, but I've transitioned to supporting more of a tutoring style. So students have their homework, and everyone studies English in school, so I mostly help them with their homework and go over vocab and some grammar concepts with them and give practice reading. And that's been a lot more fun.
Now, obviously, Palestinians are Arab and speak Arabic. Do they know good English, many of them?
I've met a lot of Palestinians who know great English, and of course a lot of students who also really struggle with English. I think some schools teach better than others, and some students are more motivated than others. But yeah, so I've seen the whole range of ability in English. Yeah, some not knowing, sadly not being in high school, but not knowing the English alphabet, and then others being able to talk really fluently even.
Are you gaining research from volunteering at these organizations?
Yes. It's been a great way to kind of plug into a community, as I'm very much still an outsider, but to gain some level of insider status, especially at Noor, where there's many teachers at Noor, and I'm just one of them. So sometimes I participate in other meetings or other gatherings. So that's been a great way to hear some stories. And at Ma'an al-Hayat, the other organization I volunteer for, they're very accustomed to having volunteers. So again, I'm just one of them. I can plug into their community life. And it's, so far been a really effective way to build relationships and hear stories.
And these are both organizations that work with disabled people.
Yes, exactly. So Ma'an al-Hayat works with adults with developmental disabilities or special needs. So we, at Ma'an al-Hayat means together for life in Arabic. And we create things out of wool. Ma'an al-Hayat is the West Bank's only wool workshop. So they make nativity scenes and other little gifts out of wool, and we do that together. So it's a great way that people with disabilities and people without disabilities are coming together to rely on each other for a shared income through their craft.
What sort of things have you found out during your research?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of really sad stories about different ways that the political situation here can lead to disability. So including through tear gas exposure. A lot of the women at Noor think that when they were exposed to tear gas when they were pregnant, that was part of why that their children were born with disabilities. Or others have told me about underlying health conditions that were exaggerated by tear gas, or just the mental health challenges that they deal with from not knowing when soldiers may come to their house, or not being able to travel, or just not having access to reliable water. The list goes on. But I've also been really encouraged by the sense of community that I see being developed at Noor as well as at Ma'an al-Hayat, and have been really impressed by the fellowship I've seen between people with and without developmental disabilities. And I hope that I can learn more about that and share more about that in my American context.
So does some of this research that you've actually found out need much, much more research and study to make it actually like an official, yes, this is actually definitely affecting people's lives?
Yeah, I think there's, as we read in the Bible, the work is many, but the harvesters are few. So ask the Lord to send more people. So I would love to ask the Lord to send more people into the harvest of research on disability here in the West Bank. So I'm not a scientist, so I can't evaluate scientific claims about the effects of tear gas, but I can compile stories and evaluate counterclaims and things like that. And I've been impressed also by the vast number of organizations here in Bethlehem that support people with disabilities and Christians Abroad's commitment to helping these organizations. And so I think there's a lot more stories to be told in this area.
Does more money need to be spent on disability here in the Palestinian Authority?
I think absolutely yes. Yes, a lot of people really struggle because there is no, in many developed countries, there's government support for people with disabilities, and that is just not existent here. So many struggle to find employment or have adequate health insurance, and are families who struggle to support themselves already. So in my opinion, it needs to be more money supporting them, as well as researching how to better develop centers like Noor and other places.
Are you doing any research on the Israeli side, or are you just actually more focused on the Palestinian side?
My research on disability is mostly focused on the Palestinian side, but I'm aware of a number of organizations in Israel too that help people with disabilities, and a couple that are bringing Israelis and Palestinians together. So I hope to continue exploring more of that in my time here. My work on the Israeli side is more focused with an advocacy organization called Churches for Middle East Peace, which is a coalition of 30 U.S.-based churches that are advocating together for a more just and holistic peace policies in the U.S. regarding Israel and Palestine in particular, but the Middle East in general.
Have you enjoyed being part of that experience?
Yes, I have. I've loved it. I started almost a year ago as an academic fellow researching and writing for the organization, and then about 2 months ago I moved into a new role as the manager of Middle East partnerships. So my job is to meet with NGO leaders and church leaders here to hear about their concerns for peace in Israel and Palestine especially, and share with my counterparts in the U.S. and talk about how we can best advocate with our congressional contacts for the needs we see here. So it's been very rewarding and meaningful, and a great way to get to know the community better too.
Now, you are American and you've learned Arabic. How was the experience learning Arabic?
The experience was and is very humbling, I will say. So I've been at it I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary a week ago. And on the one hand, I'm really proud of myself and the progress I've made. And on the other hand, I'm very aware of the progress I still need to make. But I will say to anyone who's thinking about learning that I've loved doing it, and I found it very rewarding to be able to talk to people and to read Arabic texts. It's a beautiful language. So anyone who's thinking about it, I encourage you to go for it.
Do Palestinians understand you okay, or do they sometimes correct you when you say something wrong?
Yes and yes. I find most people, 3 out of 4, or more than 3 out of 4 people understand me well, especially people, fortunately for me, who work with people with kinds of disabilities who end up not speaking as clearly. They tell me they're used to people like me not speaking with a very traditional accent. So while, of course, I still make many mistakes and am often corrected and grateful for those corrections, I've been really surprised and grateful to be able to, for the most part, communicate in just Arabic.
Is it difficult to learn?
It is a slow process. There's a number of letters that have sounds that we don't use in English, and the alphabet is its own challenge too. Syntax and just the concepts of the vocabulary don't always line up with English's conceptual vocabulary. So it's just a slow process that requires a lot of patience and patient correction from loving friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it like what you expected coming here, and was it a culture shock as well?
Yeah, I think I felt more culture shock when I first visited for a month in 2019. And this time, coming back to Bethlehem, I knew more what to expect. But of course, in the time of Corona, and again, I arrived in May, so right at the beginning of the war with the Gaza Strip. And that was a very shocking time because of all the violence and the variety of reactions to it here in the West Bank. So in some ways, I am still, maybe the most unexpected thing I'm adjusting to is that I haven't seen rain in 4 months. And it's the first time in my life I haven't seen rain for 4 months. So very much looking forward to it in the winter.
What are you going to do with all the research that you've been collecting?
Yes. So my goal is to publish it, well, first to finish my dissertation for my PhD and then to publish it in some capacity, either as a series of articles or as a book. So that'll be a little bit down the line, but that's the goal, to share the stories as widely as I can.
Have you made lifelong friends here?
I hope I have, yes. People have been very welcoming. So the church group I'm a part of, I hope to been in touch with many of them since 2019, including you, Paul, and hope to stay in touch with them for a long time. I hope to stay here for a while, but whenever I do eventually go home, hope to definitely stay in touch with people from church as well as people from a running group called Right to Movement that I've really enjoyed being a part of.
Mm-hmm. Have you learned a lot spiritually by being here?
I've learned very much. I think, Jesus says that you have to hate your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, your children in order to follow him. And I wouldn't say I hate my family, but there is something about leaving home that I think has allowed me to meet the Lord in new ways, and to follow his call here and to be in a culture where I'm a foreigner has allowed me also to see the ways that my culture in America, its emphasis on consumerism especially, was shaping me in ways that I wasn't aware of before. And now I've been able to distinguish myself from that culture and distinguish God's voice from that culture too. And being in a new environment without the kinds of social support that I once had has allowed me to focus not just on what I need, but also in a more radical way how I can love my neighbor, which is a global neighbor and as well as a local neighbor. So I've been meditating a lot on 1 Corinthians 13 and what does love look like in this context and in my unique role as a researcher and as a volunteer and as an advocate.
Have you had a chance to travel around the country as well? What's your favorite place you've been to?
I have, and I look forward to traveling more. I realized I got here in May, and in June I realized it's quite hot. And so some of my traveling, I love hiking, so I'd love to do more hiking once it cools off a bit. But I have traveled some, and I think the favorite city I've been to is Ramallah. It just has such a vibrant energy, nice crowds, and just it's a beautiful city. I'm hoping to spend more time there, and I've heard there's ice skating, so that's something else I miss from the U.S. that I would love to do. Yeah.
Well, you're here in Bethlehem. What's your prayer for Bethlehem?
But I loved visiting Ramallah, but Bethlehem is dear to my heart. So I pray for Bethlehem that Christians would be unified here behind the knowledge of our Lord and our love for him. And I pray, too, that the Lord would continue to bless interfaith relations here, that we would be a city of peace and a city of love. And we would always remember, as I think many Bethlehemites do, how much a privilege it is to live where Jesus was born. So I do pray for peace, and I pray for the refugees here, and I pray for everyone rightfully angry about the situation. And I pray that we would work together for the coming of the kingdom.
Are you going to be here for Christmas? And will this be your first Christmas here in Bethlehem?
Yes and yes. When my travels were delayed because of Corona, I was first very sad to think I would miss Christmas in Bethlehem. And now that I'm here, I'll stay definitely for Christmas. I wouldn't miss it, and really glad to be able to experience that. Yeah. I've only heard stories about what it's like and seen pictures, but to be here for it will be something really special, I think.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Great to be with you.